This is a question from Renee in Albuquerque, and Renee asks a question. First of all, the question is related to the silence of God, which I'll mention in a moment. And the heart of the question is: can we trust? Can we still trust and believe in answered prayer? Can we still trust and believe in answered prayer? Well, first of all, Renee says, my question is on the silence of God. Even so, can we still trust and believe in answered prayer? Now, the silence of God is a doctrine. There is actually a very good book written by Sir Robert Anderson called The Silence of God that speaks to this. It's not an easy book to read. You can find them free on the internet. One of these days, Dispensational Publishing is going to update and revise and make it a little easier to read, because there's some great theology in there. But the doctrine is that in the age of grace in which we live, God has given us every revelation that we need to know. He's given it to us in the Scripture. And that God is not actively judging individuals and nations as he was, for example, with Israel in the days of the Old Testament. But in this age of grace, he has given everything we need, and now is allowing us to be free to decide what we do and when we do it and how we do it. And we know the answers and the consequences. So comes a great question then. If that is all true, and I think there's great evidence for it, if that's true, can we still trust and believe in answered prayer? Now, a number of months ago, I had a series, and it's available online on our YouTube station, youtube.com/Randy White, and it was called Praying in the Age of Grace. And it was 4 or 5 sessions that speaks, obviously, in fuller matter to this particular issue on this age of grace, or this age of silence. What is prayer? And in that series, one of my propositions was that we are building, or we have in the Christian church, we have built our prayer doctrine based upon teaching that comes from other dispensations and does not carry over into today. And so we look at things like whatever you ask, you will receive, as long as you ask believing. And yet we know that, can I say, we know that not to be true. Because we have seen the greatest of saints who have asked and not received, and so we're trying to put this together. I think we've got to rightly divide the word of truth. Otherwise, we're going to claim some promises that honestly aren't ours. So, if you cannot take, for example, what Jesus teaches about prayer to those who are living under the law and the age in which the kingdom was approaching, if you can't apply that, you can't apply the teachings of the Old Testament, for example, where do we begin to go, or what do we begin to do? I think when you look at the Apostle Paul, what you find is that the Apostle Paul expects prayer. He asks for prayer, but he doesn't teach anything about prayer. He doesn't tell us how to pray. So I do think that the best I can come up with, and I think there's some biblical basis for this, is that we are in an age of silence, except that God has offered, especially on certain issues, he has offered to stop the silence, to come and intervene. And when God's people pray, he very well may act upon those prayers, and he may do so at the request of those who are saved, those who are part of the church. If any of you lack wisdom, for example, let him ask of God, who giveth freely and upbraideth not. And we can look into a number of other scriptures and examples of this. I don't think Paul would have instructed over and over and over again, pray for me, pray without ceasing, pray always, pray in everything, if we could not trust that prayer actually did something, that there was actually some fruit to prayer. So I think the answer to the question, Renee, is yes. I think very much we can trust in prayer. I just think we have to be very careful at what prayer promises we trust in. Let's understand what age and dispensation that we're in. Excellent question from Albuquerque. Thank you.